now we have two guys knowing everything about failures and success within IoT. Two super experienced guys, and this will be a hybrid presentation with Fredrik Teblin on stage and Jens Erler by video from Düsseldorf. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Fredrik Teblin, and I'm heading the IoT sales in Sweden at Telenor IoT. And I have the opportunity to co-host this session with Jens Erler direct from Düsseldorf. Jens, are you with us?
Hi, Fredrik. Yes, I'm here, an IoT business consultant working with Ericsson's IoT sales organization. I would have loved to be with you in Kista today, but unfortunately, we had to use our connected studios here, the big one in Kista and its tiny little twin here in Düsseldorf.
Yeah, nice to have you with us. I hope it's fine in Düsseldorf, Jens. I hope so. We have it really funny and a great show in Sweden. And it was a fantastic presentation from Husqvarna. I have only one clue, because my lawn is not so green as you shown in the picture. Mine is totally burned and brown, so maybe I need to invest in some Gardena watering system as well. I don't know.
Same here, Fredrik. Same here.
Same in Germany. Same in Germany. That sounds good. So in this session, we will cover how to success in IoT. We will also talk a little bit about failure, and also Jens will show us a tool that could help in IoT POCs and also in bigger rollouts as well. A little bit how we calculate. But first, I've been working in this IoT era for plus 15 years, and when I started for plus 15 years, it was not even called M2M, machine-to-machine communication. It was called telematic solutions with SMS and data circuit switched calls for those that was part of that time. So I will share some reflections from that time. If you see here, there is a lot of IoT drivers out there. There are tons of IoT drivers. But due to my experience, I will give you some insight, because I have passed through a lot of successful IoT cases, like the Husqvarna one. But I have also passed through a couple of projects that have totally get stuck or have failed totally. And what is the reason for that? We will see if we could cover that a bit in this session. But drivers, my experience is that if you have a huge driver behind your IoT project, then you have a little bit higher success ratio to succeed with a big rollout later on. So now you're quite curious, what is the first driver that came around 2002, 2001? Wow, cost savings. So that was the first, due to my experience, that came up. So instead of sending out a technician to the machine, you could remotely control it or read out some information from the machine. The second one is regulation. We have already touched upon it a bit. If you take an example here in Sweden with the utility regulation that came 2005, 2006. So regulations is also driving IoT projects and give it a real push forward. And those are still valid today. So it was not in the past. So they are still valid. Next one, 2-1. So it's laziness, especially for the consumer products. So I'm quite sure that the majority of the audience here wants to cut their grass or cut the lawn from the TV sofa, from the mobile phone, instead of running after the fossil one. So, and the enabler for this is for sure the smartphone. Thanks, Apple, to that. So the smartphone is the enabler to doing that, because everyone is having a window and a computer where it's easy to interact with end user. And also that drives the digital business, for sure. So digital business is a combination of that. So that is also a huge driver. And the final one is climate. I was in a meeting this Monday where I had a discussion with a company in Europe. They're doing water leakage detection, because 30% of all pumped water, fresh water, are leaked out or wasted. So if you could find the leakage and save the energy of pumping 30% water out in the waste, let's say, underground, that could save a lot of power. So climate is also becoming more and more important, and also the CO2 footprint as well. So what are you saying, Jens? Are you sharing this with me? There's still a lot of IoT projects that get stuck and are not scaling. So what are you saying, Jens?
Yes, indeed. I share that same experience, and it's also sort of verified by external research, like Beecham in 2020 published a report on this, basically concluding or seeing that still more than 50% of all IoT projects are either mostly or completely considered to be unsuccessful, which I find quite impressive, I have to say. And with sort of 50% of these projects being in POC and pilot status, but still. And then, if you look a little bit at the business objectives for IoT projects, which you see in the middle here of the screen, there is actually two outstanding candidates for failure. It's driving revenue, and it is enabling new business models. So, sorry. Now, the study also shows, by the way, that enterprises are even struggling with the definition of business objectives and defining the right parameters to be able to measure success for these type of projects. So yes, Frederick, I see the same thing.
I also
and
think
it's also related to my own experience working with enterprises.
Yeah, I also think, depending on if you take enabling new business model, one reason for that are struggling a bit, I think that could be that that the reason is if you're initiating a new IoT project, it's driving by cost savings. So maybe you're giving the service for free. Then you have had quite hard to charge for it later on. So that could be one reason. Another reason could also be that the business systems within the company is not built for charging those type of services. They are used to charge one-time fee. They're producing a water pump and selling it. It's one-time transaction. So they are not used to have a recurring fee on top or selling it as a service. So what should we do? Is there any tips and tricks, and how could you do about this, Jens?
Yeah, one way to tackle this problem is clearly to, at an early stage of an IoT project, really already at POC or pilots stage, to start to work with business value estimations. Maybe introduce a business value calculator that allows you to also structure thinking here related to this. Purely by chance, of course, we have a few value calculators here that I could demonstrate. And let's start with this one. This is actually a value calculator that has been built based on a real project together with a customer from the vending industry. And this is a calculator that I like a lot, in particular also because it is actually focusing a lot on revenue generation and also to some extent on new business models. So I will not bother you with too much figures here and data, but some we have to put a little bit of perspective into things. So imagine a company operating 20,000 vending machines, let's say around Europe, and with an annual revenue generated in the range of 300 million euro. Okay, so let's see then how some of these revenue generating use cases can impact this company. And let's start then with a simple case, supply management. Supply management is actually basically about avoiding lost revenue, so reducing or eliminating. So, and we can see here that implementing this use case for our company here would produce an annual business revenue or business value in the range of roughly 5 million euro. From a POC perspective, this means that we need to be able to keep track on the stock, right, per item in each of the vending machines. So we need to be able to collect this data, maybe produced by simple counters. And then we need to collect this data at least frequent enough so that we can trigger supply chains and processes if needed. So that's a simple way of doing that. And if we can showcase that we can demonstrate that we can collect this data, and then the rest is an exercise of putting figures here into such a tool. Let's then introduce another interesting use case here, which would also be able to contribute with around 5 million euro annual revenue. And that's what we call here differentiated pricing management. The idea behind this case is actually to leverage peak demand pricing, so increase prices a little bit during peak demand, but also during off-peak times, maybe introduce happy hour type of pricing. To be able to implement such a use case, what we need to prove in a POC is, first of all, that we are able to identify peak demand times, right? Which can be very different from machine to machine or location to location or customer to customer. So that means we need to collect the data, the sales data from each machine, even per sales item, I would say, in such a small granularity along a timeline that we can identify these time slots, peak demand and off-peak demand. And then we need to prove that we can change the pricing on the vending machine, so sending pricing data to the machines. The rest is then a theoretical exercise in putting the business value calculation together. Maybe quickly a third one, which is display monetization. So the idea here is that we are in the lucky position that these vending machines have larger screens to sell advertisement space on these screens. That could produce another sort of 3 million euro annual revenue or so. So what do we need to prove in our POC to make this a reality? Well, we need to be able to send media content to the machines. And then we also need to document which media content has been visible on the machines, when and where and for how long, so that we're able to send a bill to a customer in the end. So there's more use cases that we don't have so much time to go into here. Selection management would have been one, which is basically about optimizing the offering on the vending machine. But all in all, only these 4 use cases have the potential to generate around 25 million euro additional revenue, which I think should be, since it is around 10% of the annual revenue that we have today, that should be attractive, I think, for executive levels to understand. Now, the same thing you can do with all sorts of industries and use cases. So quickly, a few other examples. Here is a business value calculator from the micromobility space. So shared e-scooter services, where we have worked with 3 use cases, 2 centered around asset management, so increasing lifespan of scooters by basically understanding where they are so that they don't get lost, which is still a problem in this industry today, but also to collect health data from the assets, maybe produced by an onboard diagnostics unit. And then improved logistics would use the same data, but to organize the service logistics around maintenance of such vehicles. And then a third case has been around dynamic pricing again. So either one could apply the same concept as we have seen in vending machines now, like peak demand and off-peak demand pricing, not used in this industry a lot today, but that may change. Or in this case, actually, it was about giving a price incentive back to users if they park the e-scooters appropriately. You know that some people are really lazy when it comes to parking, which is a problem that the industry is facing today. So this is one example. Here's another one from the truck transport industry. This is a more complex case. I will just give you a few key takeaways from this one. We have looked at 2 use case clusters. One is centered around truck and trailer monitoring, so everything around asset management to avoid unplanned repair costs and unplanned downtimes of trucks and trailers. And the other one is truck driver assistance, that is a use case which is actually discussed quite a lot in this industry today. Not only that you can offload truck drivers from administrative burdens, but there's also now quite a discussion around how can you coach drivers to apply a more eco-friendly driving style, which reduces greenhouse gas emissions, it saves costs, and also potentially even reduces accidents further. So I think we need to leave it here. I hope I was able to give you some inspiration how you can already at an early stage of a POC get a clear understanding of what shall the business benefits be, what do we need to measure, and what is the IoT, the functional capabilities that we need to prove then towards an executive team that we can deliver against the expectations of such projects.
Thank you, Jens, for giving us a teaser to this IoT business calculator. It could help maybe a lot POCs and so out there. So many thanks. But if you should ramp up and summarize and give some reflections, so what is your recommendation how to succeed with an IoT project and rollout, Jens?
Yeah, I mean, 3 recommendations from my side. I think they did radiate already through my little speech here. The first one is really to, in a POC, start already with thinking about business value. I mean, IoT technology is a largely proven technology today. There may be hiccups and challenges and things here and there, but it's time to put the focus really on understanding and documenting business value. And also spend really time, take a whiteboard to understand what is the business objectives, how do I measure these business objectives, as I said before. And then these 2 things also are then the foundation that I guess you need to secure the buy-in from executive levels, which I think is also fundamentally important. They shouldn't just come in at some point in time and ask you, what the heck are you doing? They should be on board from the beginning. Anything you would like to add, Fredrik?
Good topics and recommendations, Jens. I will also add two to one, and you have heard them before, but it's really important to repeat them. Consider scalability from the very first beginning, so you're not building in yourself into a corner, and you need to rebuild the solution fully again when you should take your solution out to other countries, for instance, or if you're building a technology that only supports maybe a local area or a smaller places, so to say. And also, the last one, number 5, you have heard it also before. Think big, but start small. I have been through so many projects that you should solve everything in one big bang, and those always fails. So thank you for us, and welcome up, Paolo.
Thank you guys for sharing insights in regards to success and failure. Question just, Fredrik, what is the most common point of failure based on your almost 20 years experience, but you're still 35? But
I'm only 25, so I don't know the mathematics. The single point of failure, the most important thing, I would say, is the internal organization, the transformation of the internal organization. So instead, as I mentioned, selling a product, you should be able to sell a service on top of the product or sell a service. So I think the transformation and education, even from the sales representation, the sales reps are maybe used to sell a water pump, but then they are not educated and can't sell a service on top. They don't know how to do this, and then everything fails. So that is the takeaway.
Okay. And for you, Jens, is there certain verticals that are more successful than others?
Yeah, I think there's quite a mixed picture out there today. I mean, there are some industry segments which are really successful in this and have reached quite a maturity. Think about the automotive industry, for example. Think about the utility industry. I think electricity metering or smart metering in general have been mentioned earlier. Of course, driven by regulation, but this has given these industries a head up early. Then we have a broad number of industries somewhere in the middle. Professional coffee machines is a segment that I know well. There are some really innovative market leaders when it comes to IoT and some really falling behind and trying to recover ground. And then there's also the tools, the consumer tools industry, with Husqvarna here being one of the strong innovators and others struggling to compete with that. And then there's industries like the construction industry to some extent maybe, or the building facility management industry, which I would say are still digitization laggards.
Thank you, Jens, for interrupting you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.